Hello and welcome. I'm Corey Kell, creator of FlatEarthIntel.com. Today we're going to talk a little bit about using the sun in the big picture and how it relates more or less the Bible. We're going to talk about a few things, but why we want to use the sun. You can validate both the globe and the FE models using the sun, testing the model's orbital mechanics. Through that, we want to exclude the one model through extensive testing. In other words, we want to remove the one model that isn't valid. We can also remove the long distance gain piece off the board, meaning space, if it's the globe model that fails. The globe and evolution are tied together at the hip. In other words, there's a sequence for the heliocentric model which is reversed from the biblical geocentric flat earth model. Evidence of a creation, flat earth, and intelligent design by God. So let's talk a little bit more about that. The shape of the earth and why it's the big deal. There are basically two roads you can go down. The cosmic accident, Big Bang Theory, mainstream science, that's the globe model. Or the intelligent design creator biblical model laid out in Genesis chapter 1. That is the flat earth model. And why do we say that? Because there's a sequence. And how do you know we live on a ball or a flat earth? Trust but verify. The cosmic accident model, the Big Bang Theory, is the globe. It's by its sequence. It is tied to the theory of evolution at the hip. And when we can do a side-by-side comparison, and we can get an AI overview just by asking the order in the heliocentric model on creation, or the Big Bang Theory for the globe model. And then look in Genesis chapter 1 for the biblical flat earth model. And then we can lay out the sequence of events. And if we look at the first main thing that's very obvious is step 1 in the biblical model is heaven and earth and the waters. Heaven and earth are created right away. Earth is formed. Now when we look at the heliocentric Big Bang globe model, we see that the earth is one of the last areas that's formed towards the end. So again, right away we have problems in sequence. So those people who try to tie in the earth with the earth in the biblical globe model, that's out of sequence. That sequence is opposite. And again, it's the reason that Genesis is the first book in the Bible versus Revelation. There is a sequence and a reason why that's there in place. So again, I get emails and some people and I get comments talking about, well, it says the earth is a sphere in the Bible. Really? I haven't seen that. There's a reference to the term ball in Isaiah later on in the chapter Isaiah when he talks about the shape. And again, that term ball is in Hebrew, and it's not used in the very beginning in Genesis. So there's another obvious point. We can also look at when the stars are formed and when our sun is formed. In the creation model, that's one of the very last things. The creation of the sun, moon, and stars are created last, after the earth. And you look at where the stars are formed in the heliocentric Big Bang globe model, they're formed before the earth. So again, people not understanding the sequence. Sequence is very important. It's very telling. You don't need to be a biblical scholar to figure that out. Just read the book of Genesis and understand the sequence of the models. Again, this is why the Bible is in alignment with the flat earth model. Everything you need to know is in Genesis chapter 1. The sequence events are the construct. And this is the wrong model with the biblical model. Again, just because the sequence events, how it's created. This is the heliocentric. The ball earth is the heliocentric model. And they're not sharing it with anybody, to be honest. Intent, understanding the higher knowledge, intent, purpose, direction, and focus. Again, using higher knowledge, field experience, and we're talking about military science, proven application and process. Even in the book of Daniel talks, even to the time of the end, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. And I believe we're in the end times. And I'm talking about the test process that you can tell the shape of the earth that anyone can perform. And really, when we talk about some of the major points on this 9-step geometric validation process, it's the sun survey point. Once in place, using vertical angle, VA verifies the globe and FE model's sun position at its said size, at its said distance, based on the model Surface angle or geometric shape, that's huge. It doesn't get any more solid than that. That is like having gold bullion at your house. Again, this is why we use the higher knowledge and the 9-step geometric validation process, which was developed from I developed it from military science, live fire safety, and kill boxes because they do have those defining limits, near, far, and left and right limits. They are definitive. And again, that's accountability within the entire process. So when we design that test box or that kill box to test the globe and the flat Earth model in the 45-degree sector test, the globe model goes into the kill box. We move that sun position to position 2 after we get the sun survey point at sun position 1 or solar noon. Then we measure the vertical angle and we find out that's the limit at 45 degrees. It can't exceed 45 degrees. That's because you're measuring from a curved surface. Well, we find that after extensive testing, 133 tests, 76 failures for the globe model, or 57% failure rate. Whether you're using both sets of timing, which are time set or sun plot method. Again, massive geometric failure for the globe model. When we put the flat Earth model into the kill box and we test the flat Earth model and we apply it and doing the same methodology, we find that what? We find that the flat Earth model easily passes. And this is the standard, 100% out of 133 tests, 100% pass rate. That is the standard, 100% pass rate. That's what you want. This is how we can exclude the one model. And again, through testing and how that measuring vertical angle, you're measuring to the center mass of the sun. You only have so much area before you go off the edge of the limit of the sun. And that's distance. And this is through what's called a right triangle calculation. I call it the right triangle of death. In other words, once you do this, there is a terminal answer, a terminal decision point that once you exceed that limit of 90 degrees, it's over. That's either a fail or a pass at that time and point. But if you go over, that's a fail. That means that model geometrically has failed and its orbital mechanics fail. And again, if we take an example here, surface angle at 45 degree sector test, you're at 45 degrees to the sun. We had our vertical angle of 50.1. We had 95.1 degrees. 90 degrees is the limit. The sun is always in the summer sun is at 90 degrees, so you're 5.1 degrees over the limit. How do we do that? We simply add those numbers into the text box worksheet. The limit being 90 for both models. You can see the flat Earth model easily passing at 50.1, but the globe model fails. 95.1 is 5.1 degrees over the limit. So that's a failure not only in its geometric form, but also in its orbital mechanics. In other words, the sun's out of position. And then how we can determine that, we go into calculator.net, we do a right triangle calculation. This is why I call it the right triangle of death. You're going to empty out or clear all the data boxes in the right triangle calculator. You're going to then enter 2 pieces of information. Angle A is what you were over the limit, which was 5.1 degrees for angle A. Angle B is the distance of the sun. Then the next thing you're going to do, you have 2 pieces of information. You're going to hit calculate. You're going to get an answer. It's going to give you a result in A, which is 8,429,000 miles and some change. That if that number is bigger than the sun, you've exceeded that model's limit by a lot. Even by full sun size, which is about 965,000 miles, you're still over by 7 million miles. And we're only really supposed to be using half sun, which is about 400,000 miles. So you're right at 8 million miles over the limit. That's how far off the heliocentric globe model is. And again, this is why it's called the right triangle of death. There is no forgiveness. It is reality, and it is a hard reality for some folks. And again, it's why they don't teach us in mainstream science. They don't teach this. You don't learn this in your mainstream education. And again, you won't get into it unless you get into a higher knowledge science like military science. Again, there is no forgiveness in it, and that's why I call it the right triangle of death. It tells the hard story. I've tested the Earth on both terrestrial sides of the Earth. Massive failure out of 133 tests. We find that 76 failures for the globe model. Again, just massive geometric failure. Again, military science, just as Army units must validate their readiness for war through evaluation and testing of the unit's wartime metal, which is our mission essential tasks, we can validate the shape of the Earth using the sun. Trust but verify. And again, it's based on a layered process of applications. How do we get to that truth? Understanding that higher knowledge built on solid foundations and fundamentals. I'm Corey Kell, creator of FlatEarthIntel.com. For more information, visit that website. Thanks for watching.